Hello and welcome to Lyric Hi-Fi. It's the first video of 2022, so Happy New Year to everyone. Happy New Year, Brenton. Happy New Year, Jamie. We're all back again. And this is a type of video we haven't done before because I'm just introducing an interview which I did before Christmas with Roy Gandy, who's the owner of Rega. Now, you've heard me talking about Rega before, and we've been dealing with Rega here in Belfast for 40 years. It doesn't seem possible. Look at this. It couldn't be 40 years. So I first met Roy about 40 years ago, and quite amazing because I was in my early 20s and he seemed like he knew everything, but actually he was really only in his 30s. But what happened when November of 21 was that I was invited to the What Hi-Fi Awards dinner. I was actually going to try and do a video at the dinner, but it was actually extremely boring, just lots of men in black suits. But the next day, I'd actually got a call previously from Roy to say, come along and see what is going on at the Rega factory, because I hadn't been there for maybe 3 or 4 years. So the day after the awards dinner, I went down to see Rega in Westcliff-on-Sea in Essex. Roy showed me around the factory, stayed over at his house, talked till far too late, and then get up the next morning to film an interview. And this interview, I didn't have any concept of how long it would take. We just thought we'd start talking and see what happened. So off we went. And so we talked for quite some time. And luckily there were some interruptions, mostly from my fault of not being able to work the camera. And so we actually talked for so long that this video will actually be split up into 4 or 5 different episodes. And I find it fascinating, so I don't see the point in editing stuff out. Let's just put it all out there. So this will be the first one. And the first one is from Roy's early time, explaining about how he got into engineering, even just being interested in how things worked. And so this is getting inside the brain, if you like, of Rega research. So hopefully you'll find this fascinating as I do, and we'll start the video. Enjoy. Okay, hello and welcome. I'm Michael from Lyric Hi-Fi, but as you can see, I'm not in Lyric Hi-Fi. And I'm actually in a very nice house in Essex, which is owned by this friend of mine beside me. And this is a very special and unusual situation. This is Mr. Roy Gandy, who owns and is the founder of Rega Research. And as you know, if you've seen any of my videos, we talk about Rega quite a lot, and we love what they do. We've talked about the company. But now we're going to hear a bit, maybe some more unusual stuff from the actual owner and founder. So I wanted to say, for people that maybe don't know a lot about Rega and all they know about is how famous you are, how you win all these awards year after year. You've got products that have been going for all these years and they're all fantastic. But if you go right back before there was a factory and how this started, and you know your background with what took you to the music thing, the wanting to make a turntable, what was the spark for that?
Well, my upbringing was very musical. I think my mother was a concert pianist.
Wow.
And she taught music, and it's literally only since she's died that I've found out how competent a pianist she was, because I've tried to record a piece of music that she used to play, and I've not been able to find even highly qualified pianists who can play it well. And it's one of the projects I failed in. My father was also a self-taught operatic singer, to a level where I'm told he used to be able to imitate 5 different operatic tenors of the time, Caruso and Gili and Jussi Björling and Maria Lanza. And I believe he did a radio program where he was doing the imitation and the panel were trying to guess if it was him or the real thing. So I was brought up with this without even knowing it. And if your mum plays the piano, you're not interested.
Yeah.
Basically, it doesn't seem anything special.
Yeah. My mum played the piano.
Yeah. So I've just, like most people, had this huge background of music, and what I've realised in my later life is I was privileged enough to have these amazing musical influences in my background that didn't actually influence me in any way at the time, but it probably gave me a standard. You know, if you hear this background pianist music that is actually an incredible standard and you just think it's normal, then what I have done is had the curse of becoming quite discriminating in music, and it is a curse. It's an advantage. It's wonderful because I think I can get more pleasure out of extreme musical emotion than many people, but I also get less pleasure from most music.
Okay.
I have a less broad interest in music than almost all the people I know.
Okay.
I'm much more picky about who and how, and I've been struggling all my life to try and work out what it is, but it is, I'm fairly sure it's this ability of very unusual musicians to be able to convey emotion in their performances.
Okay.
And at a very young age, my father got a tape recorder from his school when I was quite young, and I was immediately intrigued by why, when we recorded something off the radio, it didn't sound the same as the radio did.
Okay.
And I did all sorts of experiments and blew up the radio, blew up the tape recorder in trying to connect the tape recorder to the wrong bits at the wrong age. But that's always intrigued me. Recorded music, reproduced music, why these very few special musicians lose that indefinable something that they've got, that they're able to convey, that people recognise, and it tends to, 90% of it goes in the recording. And that's sort of been my driving force amongst many other things in my life which I've been interested in. As you know, food I'm even more passionate about than music.
The food is the third part of this video. We're going to do music, then we could be here for some time, so settle down. We shouldn't start on food. So then from that music and that playing about and trying to find out more about that, then of course you became an engineer.
Yeah.
And so then there was a formalised training and role in terms of the problem solving.
Yeah, and again it was sort of unwilling, where a lot of kids have a vocation.
Yeah.
I became an engineer really, again, looking back on it. You know, I'm old enough now to be able to look back at my life and ask why. I became an engineer just out of necessity. It enabled me to do the things that I had to do. So as a 2-year-old, I got my first scooter, and I became liberated. And at the age of 4, I got a lovely big wooden scooter, but the wheels kept seizing up. And my parents were totally non-scientific and non-engineering to an extreme degree, and they didn't even know how to oil the wheels.
Okay.
So at 4, I was asking neighbours, what do I do? And a neighbour came with an oil can. Oh, so I learned how to oil things.
Okay.
They had 2 bicycles which had got punctures, and they thought that was the end of the bike. They had a puncture,
right. Okay.
and I wanted to ride them. I could see people, and I had this urge at the age of 4, before school, I wanted to ride my mum's bike because it had I could sit on the crossbar.
Okay.
And I found another neighbour that showed me with forks how you took the tyres off, and the memory's hazy, but I know he taught me how to repair a puncture.
Okay.
And we repaired them together. And I got on my mum's bike and started riding it. And I can remember calling that the bit was, Mum, look. and I remember her going, Yes, dear. Yes, come in. So my engineering started like that, not because I had influences, but because my parents were so extremely non-engineering that I was forced to become involved because I needed things like scooters and bicycles.
Okay.
And then I got to teenage and I wanted a motorbike. It was my whole being. All my friends had motorbikes, and my mum by that time was a single parent. We had no money. All my life I couldn't even afford bicycles. My father had promised me one if I passed the 11 plus. When I passed the 11 plus, he didn't come up with the promise. He was mean and tight. And my mum managed to scrape together enough to buy me a second-hand bike, but of course it needed lots of work, and I had to ride to school. It was 7 miles away. If I didn't ride, I either had to get a bus, which was half an hour earlier, which meant I had to get up early, and I hate getting up early, or I got there 10 minutes late and was caned. So my bike had to be kept going every day without fail. And I did get caned once or twice, but that really pushed me into learning that this bike had to keep going. Even I had to keep a puncture kit with me so that if it broke on the way to school, I could mend it. If that gives you a bit of background, it's enforced engineering.
That's amazing.
Training.
That's amazing. The engineering at Rega is, jump in and correct me when I'm wrong on some of these things. The engineering at Rega in terms of hi-fi companies, to me, has always been quite different. Specialist British companies, I've visited lots of them, have parts that come in and they assemble them, and there are a few that actually make some things or have machines, but most of them don't. Rega is an interesting example. I want to talk about a machine you showed me yesterday, because to me this is a great example, and I'll let Roy tell more about it. So I'll give you the background of what I think is happening here. A part like an arm lead for a Planner 1 turntable, best turntable at the price, wins lots of awards, but it's to a price point, it's the entry level. So it has a part which is the arm lead, so it goes from the bottom of the turntable to 2 phono plugs. Really simple thing. But no one actually makes that, puts it together, does all that kind of thing. It's a bought-in part. And it's a part that there were some issues with. So Rega wanted to putting this lead together within their own factory to control it and to know it was going to be of the right quality. And this gets applied to lots of things. And it's amazing that tens of thousands of pounds get spent on a machine for what is a simple thing. Now, that's a great story and example, but the thing that I liked about all of that was your excitement about how does this machine work and what does this do, and wanting to know. And this is the I was about to say boss, but that's a different story. We came across that word yesterday. Tell me first about the excitement for the machines and that kind of thing.
Right. That's perhaps what you saw isn't the reality.
Okay.
I'm not terribly excited by machines. What I'm excited about is the development of the company and how we've got into a size situation that's unbelievable for me.
Okay.
Because I've never set out to have a company personally. I've never had an ambition to be an industrialist. It's happened. I've steered it.
Okay, so we had got to, yes, the excitement of people and people learning to do things for you in industry and within Rega. And Rega has grown enormously from the first time I came here 40 years ago. And it is an amazing vibe and feeling to the factory that there are people there who are calm but are working. And whenever you walk past, people say, "Hi, Roy," and you are one of the people that are there. But there was an interesting conversation yesterday whenever someone called you boss.
One guy.
One guy.
Yeah, one
who's
guy.
a new guy.
He's a new
guy.
driver. Yeah.
But your reaction to how the company works, because he's a new guy, explaining it to him was quite interesting. Do you want to just touch on that for a second? The premise was that he's the boss.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I mentioned before I worked at Ford. I was lucky enough, privileged enough to be sponsored by Ford to go through college, university and study engineering formally. And I wouldn't have been able to do it, as I've mentioned before. My mum was a single mum. She couldn't have afforded for me to go to university, even then when there weren't grants. And I got paid by Ford. I passed a Ford entrance exam. It's a long story. We've written a book about it.
I've read the book, yes.
And it details how I was lucky enough at school to have a friend whose father was intrigued by intelligence tests. And the opinion at the time was intelligence tests are fixed, your intelligence was fixed, they cannot be changed. And this guy, who was like a mentor to me, believed that that was rubbish and that you could change intelligence purely by practicing the tests.
Okay.
And he practiced it on us at school. Okay. And 6 of us improved our IQ levels by phenomenal amounts, by 40%.
Right, okay.
And I've forgotten where I was now. That was an aside. What was the question?
Being in charge.
Being in charge. Yeah. So I got into Ford,
yeah.
And I was lucky enough to be paid. I got through. I passed an exam that was going to allow me to be a chartered engineer, and then I hated working at Ford because it was an example of a hierarchical institution. You don't know these things when you're young. You don't know what your feelings are and beliefs are. But Ford was a company that taught me quite a few wonderful things. But it also taught me that in larger organisations, it's nothing about your competence. It's about how you got on with the managers, how well you were liked as a person. And the end result was there was a management structure and there was a grading system. If you had your degree, you went in at a grade 6. But a director was a grade 16, so it gives you, there's 10 grades in between that level. And I was a grade 6, and working mostly with people who were grade 8 to 10. And I was told on one occasion when I applied for a job and I explained that I did this, they said, "You're lying, you can't do that at Ford, you have to work with your grade 6 people." But I'd worked with these people who were grade 10s because I was just starting to make loudspeakers.
Right.
And hi-fi was very popular, and they'd heard about it and they wanted to buy loudspeakers from me, and it sort of gave me an into the company. So I became very disillusioned about this aspect that there were managers with a secretary in a rubber plant who hadn't the faintest idea what real engineering was. And by that time I'd built motorbikes and I'd built rally cars, and I physically knew how engines worked down to every single, I'd built engines from the parts, I built gearboxes from the bits. And these guys were not engineers, except 1 or 2 who I got on well with. So I developed this problem, I suppose, of disrespecting authority. And it led to my life feeling. And when I eventually left Ford and set up Rega, the first thing I wanted to do was to not have codes that developed your level of authority. I wanted it to be just what you could do that gave you the kudos in the company. So we don't have dress codes at Rega. People wear shorts in the winter, for instance. And we had a guy working at Rega for about 10 years that was a control freak. And it was great for me when the company was small and growing. He controlled everything, and he controlled the people. I was free to do the design work. I was free to go off travelling and find new distributors, and he kept the company running immaculately. You know, no mistakes ever. And if he made one, it would be covered up. You know. And that was fine for me. I was naive, and it allowed me to pursue the direction I was going, which was designing things. And after 10 years, it became obvious that people didn't get on with it, that other people in the company were growing and wanting to spread their wings, and he wouldn't let them do it. And they, not me, they eventually forced him out by playing tricks on him and being disrespectful and giving him a set of problems, and eventually he had to leave. And at that point we went into chaos because the control went.
Yeah.
And we had 2 or 3 years of absolute chaos. All the accounts were up in the air, different people came and went. I realised now that the way we were running our company from the point of view of buying and selling things was very, very different. And so normal accountants who had normal accountancy training couldn't cope with it. For instance, we always wanted to pay our suppliers on time and early.
Yeah.
I couldn't understand taking a long time to pay people because we wanted favours. I wanted to twist their arms to give us special things on time. You can't do that if you're not paying them. And so we were always telling the accountants, pay them early, get a 2% discount for paying next day.
Yeah.
And they just said, no, Roy, this is the wrong way to run a business. So we had this chaotic period, and then a couple of people in Rega came to me and said, it's chaotic, the company could go broke, what should we do? And we sat together and we said, let's try and get a system working. Let's get a good accountant that understands what we're doing, that isn't fighting us. And we found a wonderful young girl in her final year of the Chartered Accountancy exam, and she came and cleared everything up within months, when we've been trying for years. And then we put in a system, a formal system of taking away our authority, which sounds easy, but if you take away your authority, people don't want that. They want you to tell them what to do. And we did. We had one supervisor. He was a lovely guy. Incidentally, he was a thalidomide, but he was severely disabled. He had no arms and legs and walked on sort of crutches. And we didn't notice that because he was just really good at working with small things, and he made cartridges. And when we decided to install this system of taking away all our power and giving power to everybody, he said, no, I'm leaving. I want you to tell me what to do. I can remember his exact words. I want you to tell me what to do, and I want to tell my staff what to do. And he left. And he went to a sister company near us, KeyMed. Within 2 or 3 weeks, he'd come back again. He couldn't cope with their extreme set of rules. And this particular guy left and came back 4 times.
The guy that left, he came back again then?
4 times. That
times.
Our extreme. And we've had a few other people. So at the time, we had this, it was idealistic concept of a company where authority, just because it was distasteful to us and it was causing problems. And then one of the guys who was with me, Phil, who you know, started reading about management structures. And he found out that what we had in mind was a formal structure. And he gave me some books, and I then started researching other management writers. And between us, we probably went dozens and dozens of different ideas of management. And we found out that what we had in mind was called federalism, where all of the power from a centre was distributed to the periphery.
Okay.
And I read a seminal book, a book called Maverick by Ricardo Semler, and he was given a similar situation in Brazil, where he was left a company by his dad unwillingly, and he didn't know what to do. He didn't want it, and he noticed, having been left the company, that its turnover and profitability had been going down for 10 years, and it had a board of directors of 10 people, and all he could do as half their age was, what's going on? I don't know what to do, but we need to do something. And they all said, no, we don't, it's all fine. And all he could do was think, I've got to sack them. So he sacked his board of directors and went out into the factory and started asking people's opinions. And he then gave the people within his company, and this is a company of 150 million turnover.
Okay.
And he actually sold off bits of the company to people who set up their own little small subcontractors. And that it gave us a little bit of moral support. The ideas we had were not unique. They weren't wacky, that they might work. But it took us 20 years, to be honest. And during that 20 years, I kept having misgivings. Maybe this isn't working. Maybe I should start being a bit more authoritative and telling people, you must do this or we'll fire you, and I didn't like that. It's just not me. But just at some point, and it happened around 2009, a perfect storm of wonderful things all sort of happened together. First of all, the vinyl interest restarted. And I think I'm bad with years, but I think 2009 we had a doubling in sales of turntables and a halving in sales of CD players without us knowing. It just happened that year, and we thought, my God, what's gone on? We'd not put any research into turntables, we'd not brought any new models out, which is what normally gives us an increase in sales. But it literally doubled. I'm not exaggerating. We had double the sales at the end of 2009, I think. So we had a formal meeting. Let's not invest any more in the digital side, which we don't like as much. And let's actually invest in turntables. No one's ever done that. We've got 40 years, or nearly 40 years, I think, at the time, of ideas, of research that was in a bank. Things that we couldn't afford to do, things that the market wouldn't want us to do. We were making low-level, entry-level turntables that were the best in their class, in low quantities. And we had all sorts of ideas of how we could improve them, but it didn't seem relevant. If we'd made a turntable at twice the price, people wouldn't have been interested at the time. That was the sort of market influence. And suddenly we thought, we'll invest.
Right, I hope you enjoyed that part. There's more to come, but if you liked it, please do subscribe, press the buttons, like it, and that'll just cost you nothing, but get you a reminder that the next time one of these comes out, we'll send you a message. Thanks for watching.